24. Appeal. By electing a presiding officer, the Assembly delegates to him the authority and duty to make necessary rulings on questions of parliamentary law. But any two members have the right to appeal from his decision on such a question. By one member making or taking the appeal and another seconding it, the question is taken from the chair and vested in the Assembly for final decision. Members have no right to criticize a ruling of the chair unless they appeal from his decision. Standard descriptive characteristics. An appeal, 1. Takes precedence over any question pending at the time the chair makes a ruling from which the appeal is made. It yields to all privileged motions, provided that they are in order at the time according to the order of precedence of motions, and it yields to incidental motions arising out of itself. If it is debatable, see standard characteristic 5 below. It also yields to subsidiary motions to limit or extend limits of debate and for the previous question, and yields to the motions to commit, to postpone definitely, and to lay on the table, provided that they are in order at the time according to the order of the precedence of motions. If it is undebatable and adheres to pending question or questions, it does not yield to any subsidiary motion except to lay on the table, and if it is undebatable and does not adhere to the pending question or questions, it yields to no subsidiary motion. 2. Can be applied to any ruling by the presiding officer except that a. If a point of order is raised while an appeal is pending, there is no appeal from the chair's decision on this point of order, although the corrections of the ruling can be brought up later by a motion covering the case, and b. When the chair rules on a question about which there cannot possibly be two reasonable opinions, an appeal would be dilatory and is not allowed. Rules governing the applicability of subsidiary motions to debatable appeals are as follows. A motion limiting or extending debate or motion of the previous question can be applied to a debatable appeal without affecting any other pending question. Also, when a debatable appeal does not adhere to a pending question or questions, that is, when the decision on it would in no way affect the pending question or questions, such a debatable appeal can have any of the subsidiary motions applied to it except postpone indefinitely and amend. But when a debatable appeal adheres to pending question or questions, as in the case of an appeal from a ruling that an amendment is not germane, the subsidiary motions, except the motions affecting debate, cannot be applied to the appeal alone. However, they can be applied to the main question, and if the latter is committed, postponed, or on the table, the appeal goes with this main motion. In the case of undebatable appeals, when an undebatable appeal does not adhere to pending question or questions, no subsidiary motion can be applied to it. However, when an undebatable appeal adheres to pending question or questions, no subsidiary motion can be applied to it alone, but the main question can be laid on the table, and the appeal then goes to the table with the main motion and all adhering motions. 3 is in order when another has the floor. 4 must be seconded. 5 is debatable unless it a. relates to indecorum or transgression of the rules of speaking, b. relates to parity of business, or c. is made when an undebatable question is immediately pending or involved in the appeal. When an appeal is debatable, no member is allowed to speak more than once, except the presiding officer, who need not leave the chair while so speaking, but should stand. This first time the chair speaks in debate on the appeal, he is entitled to preference over other members seeking recognition. He can answer arguments against the decision or give additional reasons by speaking a second time at the close of the debate. He may announce his intention to speak in rebuttal and ask if there are others who wish to speak first. Even when the appeal is not debatable, the chair can, when stating the question on it, give the reasons for his decisions without leaving the chair. 6 is not amendable. 7, a majority or a tie vote, sustains the chair's decision of the chair on the principle that the chair's decision stands until reversed by a majority. If the presiding officer is a member of the assembly, he can vote to create a tie and thus sustain his decision. 8 can be reconsidered. Further rules and explanations. Appropriateness of appeal. If a member disagrees with the ruling of the chair affecting any substantial questions, he should not hesitate to appeal. This situation is no more delicate than disagreeing with another member in debate. In the case of serious questions, when proponents and opponents appear nearly equal, a presiding officer may welcome an appeal from his decision. By relieving the chair of responsibility in a strongly contested situation and placing it on the assembly itself, better relationships are often preserved. Applicability limited to rulings. As explained in Standard Characteristic 2, an appeal is applicable only to a ruling by the chair. No appeal can be made from the chair's response to a parliamentary inquiry or other query, since such a reply is an opinion rendered by the chair, not a ruling on a question that has actually arisen. For example, if, in answer to a parliamentary inquiry, the chair states that a certain motion would not be in order at the time, the reply is not subject to an appeal, but the point can be put at issue before the assembly by making the motion despite the chair's opinion, and, when he rules that the motion is out of order, appealing from the chair's decision. The chair's judgment as to the more numerous side in a vote, or whether there are 2/3 in the affirmative, also is not a ruling and is not subject to an appeal. Note, if the chair made a procedural error in declaring a motion adopted or lost, for example, in declaring that a motion when received a majority vote but not a 2/3 vote was adopted when a 2/3 vote was required under the rules, a point of order may be raised to that effect. Back to reading. If a member doubts the correctness of such an announced result, however, he should call for a division, see Chapter 29, or move that the vote be counted. Timeliness requirement for an appeal. If an appeal is to be made, it must be made at the time of the chair's ruling. If any debate or business has intervened, it is too late to appeal. Form an example. A member desiring to appeal rises and, without waiting to be recognized, addresses the chair as follows. I appeal from the decision of the chair. Second. The decision of the chair is appealed from. The chair, after stating clearly the exact question at issue and the reasons for his decision, if he thinks an explanation necessary, states the question on the appeal as follows. The question is on, shall the decision of the chair stand as the judgment of the assembly, or club, society, board, etc.? Or, the question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? The question is not on sustaining the chair, because the decision, not the presiding officer, is in question. The vote is taken so that the affirmative will be in favor of sustaining the chair's decision as follows. Chair. Those in favor of sustaining the chair's decision say aye. Those opposed to sustaining this decision say no. After the result of the vote was announced, business is resumed in accordance with the situation existing after the action on the appeal.